You're listening to Boobies and Noobies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and it's time for the fourth and latest installment of our inaugural summer special, Slick Summer Nights. This July, we're keeping things hot on the pod by highlighting a few of our favorite steamy scenes. Tune in all month long for the epic showdown of smaxiness as contestants share their favorite sexcerpts for an impartial judge. I'm just here to oversee the proceedings. Also, be sure to follow Boobies and Noobies on social media at Boobies Podcast, as we'll be sharing the Slick Summer Nights results throughout the month of July. And you, the listeners, can help determine the grand ultimate champion, the slickest scene of them all, by voting for your favorites on the Boobies and Noobies Instagram. As per usual, you can catch up on past episodes of Boobies and Noobies on your favorite podcatcher or on boobiesandnoobies.com. If you're a fan of the show and you've got a few minutes to spare, you might consider leaving Boobies and Noobies a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I'm not pressuring you or anything. And last but not least, if you're in the mood to show this indie podcaster a little extra love and support, you might consider joining our Patreon. We've got monthly patron-only events, sneak peeks at what we're reading next, and so much more. And you gain instant access to it all for as little as $1 per month. You'll find links to all of the above in today's show notes. But for now, it is time to meet today's competitors, all of whom I've been lucky enough to collaborate with in recent months. Contestant number 1 is the booktuber behind Erin's Reading Room, co-host of the Categorically Romance Podcast, and former Boobies and Noobies guest. It's Erin. Welcome, Erin.
Hello. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for bringing me back.
You're always welcome. And facing off against Erin and joining us from several time zones away is book blogger Simone. I recently had the pleasure of doing an IG Live with Simone about our favorite LGBTQ romance reads for Pride Month, and now she's here on Boobies and Noobies. Welcome, Simone.
Hello. So thankful to be here.
We're thankful to have you, and I know that you're melting because there is currently a heat wave sweeping most of Europe, it seems, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, I'm glad to have you both here, and before you each tell everybody listening about yourselves and the books you've selected for our showdown, I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's judge. She is a fellow Portlander, and I treasure every bookish brunch date that we have had together thus far. You might know her best, though, as one of the creators behind the Really Into This blog. Please join me in welcoming Sarah.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you. Yes, I love our bookish brunch. Let me see if I can say that out loud. So much.
I know, I'm noticing a lot of alliteration thus far in today's episode.
I love it. I'm so impressed. I'm always impressed by you, but I'm very impressed right now.
You're too sweet. You're too sweet. And I love books, and I love brunch, and I love doing them with fun people. So I'm happy to have someone like that living nearby.
Me too.
We should have a virtual brunch at one point so I can join, because book brunches sound amazing.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, Erin, you have no excuse. You live in Oregon. You could also come to brunch. I know.
I'm just like 45 minutes away. Yeah.
But I do like this idea of a virtual book brunch. So you know what? We're going to put that out into the universe and hopefully manifest that into existence.
I mean, you guys can have mimosas and like a bookish brunch, and I'll just go straight to the evening cocktails.
Sounds like a great plan.
That sounds like a great plan.
Yeah. See, I like the way this group thinks. I knew this was going to be a good group.
And we know if Kelly manifests something and puts it out here on the podcast, it shows up. It happens. It's happened time and time again. So
I'm there.
Basically guaranteed at this point.
It's usually not me making it happen, but I'll put it out there. And if somebody else wants to make it happen and invite us, that's also fine.
Can't wait.
In the meantime, before we get to our future bookish brunches, which I am going to keep in mind, I would love if each of you could introduce a little bit more about yourselves to the fine folks listening at home and about your relationship with the romance genre. So, Sarah, let's start with you.
Oh, sure. Oh, gosh. So my relationship with them. So about me, is that right?
Yes, you and romance.
Okay, me and romance. So I've been reading romance, like back in the days when it was like, like chick lit or whatever. Like some of that was like some of my intro into romance. And then probably the last 7 years, I have just been tiptoeing further and further. And now I'm in the deep pond of romance. And I love it so much. It brings me so much joy. I mainly read a lot of contemporary romance. I dabble, though, in paranormal, historical. I love audiobooks so very much. And I certainly love listening to romance audiobooks. I have my favorite narrators. And I love a series. I know a lot of people maybe don't love series, but I love them. But the romance genre in general just makes me so happy, and I love it so much.
Yes. And if anybody listening has not checked out Sarah's blog, Really Into This, she covers so much more than books. Like there's also a lot of recipes. There are also movie reviews, interviews with authors. So basically just anything that you and your co-blogger are really into.
Correct. It's pretty simple. If it's something that we like and we're chatting about in real life, we try to throw it up there.
Love it. As you should. As you should. Aaron, how about you?
So about myself, I was a late in life romance reader. So I was not the biggest reader in my earlier days as a child and younger man. But I decided one day I was going to read this long list of science fiction books that were supposedly the best of the genre before the year 2000. And when I finished that, I realized that I had spent a lot of time reading mostly men, heterosexual, white, and most often than not, dead. And I realized my reading was very limited. And so I made an effort to diversify a bit. And in that, I read The Wedding Date. And then that was it was all over for me at that point. I just fell into romance and I haven't come out since. And I've somehow gotten myself involved in vlogging and becoming the co-host of a podcast that talks about category romance. So I read a lot of Harlequin, a lot of Entangled, Thule, a lot of that stuff to keep up with the content we're making for the Categorically Romance Podcast.
And you've got your YouTube channel as well.
I do, yes. I have my YouTube channel, Aaron's Reading Room. So I do a lot of vlogging there, and then I make a bunch of noise on Twitter, usually at Harlequin Authors. And so far, they've been okay with it. So.
Good noise. Twitter's always a toss-up between the good noise and the, we'll just say not so good noise, but that's great. That's awesome. Well, Romance is happy to have you, so I'm glad you found it.
Oh, I'm happy to be
here. Simone, over to you.
Well, let's see. So I have this Instagram situation going on, like this Bookstagram, which I started because I started writing for a blog about books. Because after studying English literature, I thought, hey, why not give it a go? Write something about, English books because I enjoy them. And they wanted an Instagram from me for the about page, so I made one. This is how I got into like book blogging, I suppose. And I will say that for a long time, I always was kind of into the quote unquote chick lit, romance, bookish situation. However, I very steadfastly did not read any books with naked people on them until about a year ago, where my friend just shoved one at me and was like, this is just as good as any other romance novel, and you're just elitist and you're being snobby, and she was really coming at me. So she made me read it, and it was Game Changers by Rachel Reed, which incidentally was also a sports romance. Who knew? Because I'm really not into sports, but sport romance is amazing, delicious. Um, and so that was the first book that I read, kind of forcedly, and I completely fell in love with it. And since then, I've broadened my horizon, and I'm still broadening it because there's so much within the romance genre that I just don't know yet. But I'm reading more indie authors. I'm reading a lot of contemporary, like overall. But yeah, I'll give anything a go at this point.
Yeah. You made a great point that you're not really a sports person in real life, but you really enjoyed reading a sports romance. And I think that's a great indicator of romance readers in general, is that we read a lot of stuff that wouldn't necessarily be something we were interested in real life. And I'm not just talking about the kinky stuff. I'm talking about just the world at large of certain books, but we can open our minds enough to read it and enjoy it nonetheless.
Absolutely. I tried watching a hockey game once after reading a couple of hockey romances. I was like, okay, let's give this a go. I was watching it. I was like, no, this is not for me. However, I read a hockey scene in a romance novel, and I'm like, oh my God, there's like a triple axel. No, I'm kidding. That's figure skating. But you know what I mean. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, a triple axel would make a hockey game a lot more exciting.
That would be amazing.
I'm with you. I've never watched a hockey game in my life. I do like sports, but I like hockey romance a lot more than I like the sport of hockey. I'm sure all the Canadians listening are yelling, but that's okay. That's okay. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. If you love hockey, no shade whatsoever. So I guess the real question now is, in each of your opinions, what makes for a good, memorable, steamy scene in a romance book? Because I know how subjective this is. So I'd love to hear from each of you. And we'll start with Simone this time.
For me personally, I have to say that I'm way more into a scene if the characters seem into it. So if there's like a lot of feelings involved, a lot of thoughts that just are super into what's happening, that just attracts me as a person, as a reader, more than, say, a really, really kinky scene where it's just mechanics and where it's just a list that is ticked off. Like, I don't care about that. If I get, even honestly, even if it's a almost fade to black scene and the characters are really, really into it, I often find that more appealing than a very mechanical, very explicit sex scene.
Fair enough. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I have a lot of similar feelings to Simone there. So I do a lot of audiobooks as well. And generally when a love scene comes in, my brain will kind of just gloss over and wait for the plot to pick back up. But it takes a lot of feeling involved in the characters, a lot of internal thought, and just really feeling that emotional connection in the moment with the two characters. As well, I really like when an author has a real skill for analogy. I can use Rachel Stewart as an example. Like when she writes a love scene, you read these analogies and you're just like, wow, how did you come up with that? Not just like hair falling over their face like a curtain. These are ones you've never heard before. So yeah, definitely the emotional connection needs to be there. And I would agree, I would take a fade to black over a scene that's just doing mechanics, unless I'm reading an erotica for an erotica,
Right, where that's like the full purpose of why you picked up that book.
Then again, I feel like if you're reading like an erotica and it's simply just, you might as well read a car manual sometimes, the way things are described. It's just like very dry, very just let me throw the word cock out there a couple of times and we're good. So even then, even in erotica, I think it just needs this tiny bit of, character for it to really mean something.
Yeah, an emotional connection for sure. No, I totally understand. And I think that's so far in the episodes we've recorded thus far for Slick Summer Nights, I will say I think that there has been an emotional connection tied to the majority, if not all of the scenes. And I was very specific when I requested scene submissions for Slick Summer Nights that I didn't want to include erotica, just because, not that I don't love it, but it's just its own thing as well. Like I think we throw around the term a lot, but it is its own genre that, you know, has like a familial connection to romance, but they're like cousins. They're not necessarily super close.
Not twins.
Yeah, not twins, just cousins. They see each other, you know, at Thanksgiving. Sarah, over to you. I'd love to hear, as our judge today, what do you look for in a steamy scene?
Well, this should be a very great judging process because I am right there with Simone and Aaron. Like, I'm just right in line with both of you. You know, I do a lot of audiobooks, and there are times, like Aaron's talking about, where my ears kind of glaze over a little bit. And so I actually like to read a little bit more of those like intimate scenes, either in print or on my Kindle or whatever. And it's that intimacy, it's that emotional intimacy that really just kind of makes it for me. I don't like too much anatomical or directional language. I think that's the healthcare provider in me that kicks in, like trying to, you know, like, let's get to the physics of it. So that really brings me out of it. So like, I don't want any of that usually, for the most part. I mean, like, nothing is a blanket statement, but it's that emotional intimacy. And I mean, for me, I know it's like amazing when I have to like stop. And like, I put that, like, I put the book down, or I'm like, wow, like, that's when I really know, like, this is a really hot scene. And what makes it hot for me, though, is that intimacy.
Yeah, I will agree with you, too, about the physics, like the physical part of a scene, because the amount of times that I will be pulled out of a scene because I'm trying to imagine this position, this physical position that somebody has been put into, usually in a car or in the shower or some, where I just cannot wrap my brain around the physical aspect of that position. And I'm so thankful. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but I will put it in the show notes. There is a TikTok creator who has started doing a series that's weird, like, positions as described in romance novels, and they are hysterical because it's just it's literally what I think about when I read these scenes. And I'm sure there are some people who are blessed with being able to escape that notion of reality when they're reading these scenes. I can't do it. I don't have that gift. So to see somebody reenacting some of the wackiest positions that I know I've seen in romance, I appreciate it. Chef's kiss all around.
I will need that name.
I read a scene this morning that was in a car, and, you know, I'm like, ooh, in a car, and it's cramped and hot, and like the emotional, you know, like connection was there. And so I was, you know, really like, okay, this is great, you know, and I'm like clicking through it. And then it's like somebody sat back on their knees. I'm like,
Where?
what?
Where?
What?
How?
Where? How? What? I thought, what? Like, I mean, I like went back, and I'm like, see, that's what I don't like. Like, that pulls me out of it. Just, I don't care. Like, let's just make it veiled emotions, you know?
Yep.
Like,
Yep. I'm with you. I am with you on this. So I'm excited. I think this will be a fun judging all around. So I would love it if each of our contestants could go ahead and introduce the book you'll be reading for today. And that means the title, author, and just a brief synopsis about the book. So Aaron, let's start with you this time.
Okay, so I chose the book Mama's Boy by Avery Flynn, and this is a contemporary romance. This takes place in Avery's world of Waterbury and Harbor City. All her books so far take place there, and so it's super fun. She's got multiple series. They are all crossing over at this point. This book is actually kind of a crossing point of two series. So this is the beginning of her, I can't even think of the last name, Cardigan, the Cardigan brothers, and the, goodness, I can't.
The other last name.
And the other, yeah. So, essentially two families that had their own series. Two of them are the love interests in this story here. And it's named Mama's Boy because the male main character is close to his mother, but it didn't have the element that I was almost expecting of like the mom being in between, these characters. So that was, disappointing, but also it was done really well at the same time too. So the way it was done.
Good. Well, and that, who knows, that might have been something that would have deterred people from reading the book just based off of that idea that it could have been. So
yes,
if you're listening and now you know the truth about Mama's Boy and you were reluctant to read it, well, now you can go read it. So delightful. And then Simone, what will you be sharing with us?
I will be sharing a scene from Kiss My Cupcake from Helena Hunting story. It's a contemporary romance. It's about Blair. She's very polka dot dress, always looking perfect, almost kind of 60s vibes, I want to say. And she's opening a cupcake shop. And right next to her, we have a very old, musty sports bar run by Ronan. And he is being very loud and very annoying. And it's the enemies to lovers situation that we all love. They are trying to compete against each other for new customers, trying to one up each other, get the customers from the other person, and lots of chemistry along the way that will finally be resolved.
In the scene, I'm sure, that you're going to share. So, Sarah, before we get started, as our judge, our hopefully impartial judge, I have to ask, have you read either of these books?
I did read Kiss My Cupcake, but it was years ago.
Okay.
If you read a scene, I highly doubt I would have been like, oh, I know this is from Kiss My Cupcake.
Basically starting fresh.
And I haven't read it. Yes, and I haven't read Avery Flynn. I feel like I remember seeing that title though, so I'm excited. I'm excited for both.
Perfect. I can picture the book covers for each of the books, so that's like the image, the starting image that I've got in my head, and I'm excited to hear each of the scenes. So, Simone, why don't you kick things off with your selection?
I will do. Just a side note, but there will be the word cupcake in my scene, so maybe you would have guessed, Sarah. Okay, here we go. I curl the fingers of my free hand around the back of her neck, thumb stroking along the edge of her jaw. You like watching what I'm doing to you, Blair? She fists the fabric and moans again. Yes. You're going to be a good girl and come all over my hand? I pump faster, taking cues from the way her breath catches. Oh God, she groans and tries to close her legs, but her knees hit my hips. And then her orgasm hits. She contracts around my fingers, hips swiveling as she rides my hand. You are so damn sexy, I assure her. Before the orgasm wanes, I withdraw my fingers. She makes a plaintive sound, probably unimpressed that I stopped mid-orgasm, but I'm planning to make up for that. I yank her panties down. They get caught up on her boots, but I manage to get them off without shredding them. I grip her by the hip and drag her to the edge of the counter as I drop to my knees. What? The rest of her question dissolves into a gasp when I lick up her center. She falls back on one elbow, the other hand sliding into my hair and gripping tight. Just like one of those cream-filled cupcakes you made me eat in front of that bachelorette party. I cover her sex with my mouth, but tastes even better. That gets a moan out of her, slightly embarrassed, but also totally turned on based on the way she rolls her hips and rides my tongue back to another orgasm. As soon as I rise up, she grabs the nape of my neck with one hand and fuses her mouth to mine. She mumbles something completely unintelligible, mostly because she's sucking on my tongue. She frantically searches for the waistband of my underwear with the other one and jams her hand down the front, freeing me from my boxers. She breaks the kiss. You have condoms, right? I pull my wallet out of my back pocket, flip it open, and slap it on the counter so I can retrieve the condom that's been in there since before August. As soon as it's in my hand, Blair naps it and squints at the date before she tears it open. Her tongue peeks out as she rolls it down my length and uses her foot. The boots are still on and I'm still wearing my pants to pull me closer. Hold on. Raise your arms. She frowns but complies. Maybe because the orgasms have made her less argumentative. Or possibly she's just as ready as I am for sex, even after 2 orgasms. I grab the bottom of her dress and lift it over her head. It messes up her perfect hair a little, but all that does it make her sexier. And totally naked. You're a vision, Blair. Anticipation makes my erection kick in my fist, but I force myself to slow it down for a beat. I drag the head of my condom-covered length along her sex. You ready for me? So damn ready. She bites her lip. You want slow and soft, or fast and hard? I line myself up and meet her hot, needy gaze. She gives me a saucy grin. Surprise me. I chuckle. Such a good bad girl. I grab her hips to steady her as I push inside. She scrambles to lock her hands around the back of my neck. When I'm sure she's latched on good and tight, I pull back out, almost all the way, before I thrust again. Her jaw goes slack and her eyes roll up on a deep groan. Okay? I ask before I do it again. Yes, please don't stop. I shift her so she's right at the edge of the counter and pump into her, taking my cues from her moans and her pleas not to stop. As it turns out, Blair seems to be a fan of hard and fast.
Ooh.
Ooh!
I will say kudos for the use of just the word cupcake in an excerpt from Kiss My Cupcake. And I do like that there's mention of birth control. Yay!
And checking the dates on condoms.
Yeah, that's true. That is a good point. I appreciate the realism in a sex scene. I still, like we said earlier, I can follow along as long as we've still got some element of realism there. So always great.
And it was a very easy decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. We I think this group especially appreciates the simplicity.
You are welcome.
All right, Aaron, over to you.
All right, here we go. A shiver worked its way through her body as her knees got more wobbly the further north he went until his thumb brushed the damp material covering her slick core. She put a steadying hand on his shoulder. There was no way not to when the world had shrunk down to one spot where he was touching her, sending reverberations of lust and pleasure through her entire body. Can I? He asked in a whisper. Please. He slipped his thumb underneath, brushing it against her wet, swollen folds. He sucked in a harsh breath, as if he was the one already skating along the edge of coming. Meanwhile, it felt as if she was seconds away from flying apart at the seams. So soft, he murmured. God, I can't wait to taste you. Then, before she could take a breath, he was sitting up, one thumb holding the center of her panties to the side while he licked and kissed and sucked her clit. How in the hell she managed to stay standing was a mystery, because it sure wasn't as though her legs had any strength left in them, not when he was doing that to her, making her feel as if she could take off and float up into the sky. It was all she could do to almost, not really, control the moans of pleasure coming out of her mouth as he did delicious fucking things with her lips and his tongue. Thank God they weren't back at the house. She wasn't sure there would be a damn thing she could do to quiet herself as he did this thing with his thumb circling her opening as he rubbed her clit that had her crying out his name and murmuring promises that she had no intention of keeping, even if she could understand them. All she knew was at that moment she would do anything if he never, ever stopped because she was so fucking close. It took everything she had in her not to beg him to keep going, doing exactly what he was doing. That was always the sign for Chad to immediately switch to doing something else. Yanking her thoughts back to the here and the amazing man between her thighs, Fiona sank her fingers between Dixon's hair, encouraging him on, and he did. Thank fucking God he did. Her orgasm hit like a boomerang, a zip of pleasure up her legs that bounced outward and then rebounded back to her core with enough power to knock every thought out of her brain until there was only bliss.
Ooh. What a good way to end it, too, on bliss. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I didn't write it, so.
No, I know. I mean, honestly, but no, still very fun. Also, it started, you included the word slick, which I mean, I feel like ties in with Slick Summer Night. So
I apologize though, Kelly, the word folds was in there.
I know. You know what? Somebody had to say it, and I'm just glad it wasn't me. Thank you for pointing it out.
You're welcome.
I know. I'm part of the anti-folds club.
I know. I just have to say that like both of your narration skills are fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Like just truly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Flawless readings. Very enjoyable to listen to. And I've done my best to match up scenes that I think like have sort of like the same spice level. And I didn't even think about the fact that both of them also are the male protagonist going down on the female protagonist for part of it. So that just kind of like tied in perfectly too.
It was a very good coincidence. I was thinking about that while you were reading your scene, Aaron.
Yeah,
I thought it was really good.
Yeah, both excellent scenes from great books as well. This is one of the pairings where I have actually read both of the books. And it was funny because I remember when I got the scenes from each of you, I was like, oh my God, I never would have thought of this book. And then hearing the scenes, I was like, oh my God, like, did I just like forget about these scenes in these books? Because I think it's because both of them are very funny too. Like, I mean, especially with Avery's work, Avery writes mostly rom-com, like very laugh out loud, hilarious rom-coms. And Helena Hunting has done that as well. And I think I kind of overshadowed the sexiness with the comedy for each of them. So thank you for making me remember how hot these books are.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because it'd been a while since I'd read an Avery Flynn. And what I'd remembered was how funny they were. And then reading this one, I'm like, oh yeah, these were hot too.
Absolutely. I now want to read it, to be quite honest. I also liked how Avery Flynn just does this. It sounds very soft and delicate. Like the woman's voice sounds very soft and delicate. And then she just throws in the word fucking in random places. Like she has these really beautiful analogies. Like she's going up to the sky. She feels so good. Her mind is in like the galaxy next to ours or something. And then like he can't fucking stop. And it's like, girl, fine, go for it.
Yeah, I think Helena Hunting does the same thing. So, I mean, I think this is a good matchup. I don't envy Sarah having to make a decision whatsoever. So, you've heard us talk about them, Sarah, but I'd love to hear some thoughts from you before you make your final decision.
Yes, so these are both like, I feel like a very evenly matched. So damn you, Kelly, for so challenging for me. And this is right in my wheelhouse of like exactly what I would read. I enjoy Avery and I enjoy Helen. Just like you guys said, they're both funny. I think like very steamy, like hot. And this is so I took a little bit of notes because that's how I am. I tried to listen and be in the moment, but I also took a little bit of notes because I just have to. And what I have for Kiss My Cupcake that stood out was the, like, maybe the orgasms have made her less argumentative, you know, like just that like male character, him, you know, like that's real, right? And that feeds into their enemies to lovers, you know, connection. And then with Mama's Boy, I do love a male character. I mean, I love anybody saying it, but I really do love like a male lead saying the can I please, like can I please. I love the consent, the continuous consent, and you know the pleading of the can I please. And then just like what Simone already said, I already wrote delicious fucking things, you know, just like those. That's what stuck out to me was the flying high and then fucking, and you know, can he stop doing just like that aspect of it. Because it just makes it more real and like more raw and authentic and like, yes, we can be in our feelings, but like, fuck, you know? Yeah. So are you ready for my decision or shall I?
Yeah. Do you have a verdict? Let's hear it.
This is a very difficult choice, but I would have to give the slight advantage to Mama's Boy.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay. I genuinely had no idea what you were going to pick with this one because I was like, I don't know what I would pick with this one.
It was the use of fucking
I mean, same.
that really put it over the edge for me.
I get it.
And so I feel like another work from Helena would have won, like, with that sort of criteria. But they're both fantastic, and I mean, like, so similar. It just in that scene, I just wanted a little bit more from Avery, and so that's the advantage was the use of the F word. Just a little more raw. I don't know.
It's just the F word,
but they were both wonderful, and like yes, and your narrations, both of you, are top notch. I would listen to an audiobook narrated by either of you any day of the week.
Thank you.
That's so sweet.
Well, there you go. There you go. Now we know the next career choice for each of you to ponder is going into audiobook narration, which I do think you both did excellent readings. Yeah, that one was a tough one. I don't know how I would have called that one because I do really love it's so silly, but it's like, this is what I like. I love the conversation about like the condom and the expiration date from the other scene as well. So I'm torn because there were a lot of things that I loved about each of those scenes. So well done. Excellent choices from both of you. Sarah, great judging. What wonderful for taking notes. You're a professional. And this has been a great matchup. So before I let y'all go, can you tell the fine people listening at home where they can find you, follow you, listen to all your things, watch all of your other things, read the rest of the things, etc.? Whoever can go first. Sarah, we'll start with you.
Sure. So you can find me on reallyintothis.com. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter for the most part. And I think it's Really Into Blog at Twitter and Really Into This on Instagram.
Perfect. Aaron?
Okay. So I'm at the YouTube channel, Aaron's Reading Room. That's also my Instagram handle. My Twitter handle is Aaron's R Room. And I'm also Aaron's Reading Room on TikTok. I very recently posted my first 2 TikToks. I'm sure I didn't do them right, but, this old guy's trying here.
I love that. And also, I don't know if I'm following you yet, so I'm going to have to go change that.
Well, I've very little presence on there so far, so that's fine. And then, of course, the Categorically Romance Podcast. You can find that on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to them.
Perfect. And Simone?
Now I'm a little bit self-conscious because you all have like a list of things that you do. It's like, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Twitter, and here's me. I'm on Instagram. My handle is @books_first_, and that's it.
Honestly, stick with it because this is just a group of overachievers who are like, oh, we need to go join more platforms. And I count myself as part of that group. So no, stick with what you do amazing and go with it.
I'm an underachiever in this situation, and I'm fine with it because that is enough work as it is.
Yes, 100%. No, this has been delightful. I'm so glad that all 3 of you were here, and I think this was a great matchup. For everybody listening, once again, the books that were discussed today, Aaron shared Mama's Boy by Avery Flynn. Simone shared Kiss My Cupcake by Helena Hunting. They are both available. Go pick up a copy for yourself, and you can read all the steamy excerpts that they each have to offer. And be sure to join us next time for another showdown. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and thank you to my guests.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Noobies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Noobies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.